Therefore, the individualists clearly define their purpose for living so as never to be misled into ignoble practices. They believe that the soul has come to this beautiful world to experience it and learn from it, not to be enslaved within it. The individualist believes that existence is about perfecting oneself in mind, body, and spirit to the highest degree possible in the lifespan allotted so as to be an efficient conduit for the pure consciousness and assist mankind to do the same, thus perfecting the human race as a whole. This is the great work of the individualist, leading to true wealth and true success. Work energy directed only at the material world, such as a materialistic goal, leaving little or none for the spiritual, immaterial world, upon which the material world is based, causes the energy to remain in matter as opposed to diffusing through all planes. Therefore, by ignoring the foundation, the building collapses. It is for this reason that today's materialistic society is destined to crumble, regardless if the reader adopts the practices of individualism or not. Either way, they will be forced to rely on themselves when the machine collapses. Therefore, individualism is not just a belief system to practice, it is an inevitable force of nature. In contrast, work energy directed towards the acquisition of knowledge leads to strength in mind, body, and spirit, resulting in an overflowing of health, wisdom, and intelligence, which combined properly yields illumination, a deep understanding of the highest, be it God, the One, or whatever one chooses to label the infinite. The individualist perfects oneself in this manner not only in order to benefit oneself, but one's brethren, one's planet, one's cosmos, and one's God. Along this path is much wisdom to be recorded and shared. By sharing knowledge and experiences of this type, the individualist helps all of one's fellows mature and evolve faster with the force of inspiration. The very act of withholding knowledge is selfish, and selfishness is evil, which is darkness and separation, the division of the void. Good is selflessness, light, and unity. These two are comparable to involution and evolution. By withholding information, an individual may gain considerable power, but his fellow brethren are restricted, and thus the totality of mankind as one organism is restricted in evolution, because a part of itself is withholding the light of God, which is knowledge, which is unity. When knowledge is shared, other knowledge erupts. This force is inspiration. Upon receiving an idea, the individualist rejoices that God has given him this light and hurries to share it with his brethren, because not only has it empowered him, but by sharing it, it empowers the entirety of humanity, thus accelerating its evolution, enabling other men to receive light earlier, and thus have new insights earlier than without. They in turn share these newer insights with the initial individual, and also their fellow brethren, and thus the cycle continues and they evolve at an infinitely more rapid pace. So by sharing knowledge, the individualist helps himself exponentially as opposed to just keeping one idea for himself. Thus is further reasoning for the individualist's implementation of a system of free, unrestricted shared knowledge, the most important element to the success of the individualistic society. Any hope for individual illumination is impeded by the old market system by taking away time itself. Time to have restful awareness is how humanity evolved in the first place. With a surplus of food, there was a surplus of time. This time allowed our ancestors to deepen their thoughts, which caused their animal mind to recede as the higher mind began to exercise its imagination and ability to contemplate the divine. Time is required for deep thought and assimilating knowledge and communicating with the divine to receive ideas, light, which is the very wellspring which allows evolution to continue. Time is required to thoroughly rest and exercise the body and mind, thus ensuring the peace and health of each. Time is required to work on constructive projects aiming at the evolution and advancement of the self and of the brotherhood of mankind. Time is required to evaluate the present technologies and develop those in harmony with nature and the universe, which is God. Without time, none of this happens, and man's evolution recedes into darkness. Suppose, then, that one achieves some degree of enlightenment. What is the next task, the next priority in personal evolution? The individualist clearly knows it is to assist all others to achieve the same, if not a higher, state of awareness, thus accelerating the evolution of mankind as a whole. Rescuing those who worship dust and dirt, such as material goods, lust, money, debauchery, deceit, degradation, immorality, dishonor, disrespect, and any other corruption of a weak and rotted soul. They then continue their work, for their work is endless, and there is always a higher degree. The individualist is not a religious fanatic, yet has an unbreakable belief in God. They look up to more evolved beings as their role model and attempt to reach that degree of refinement. The infinite God is the ultimate role model. The individualist attempts in all actions and at all times to act as close as possible to God, knowing that God is a balanced, infinite creator. So too, the individualist attempts to be an infinite creator on earth while assisting one's fellow brethren, the other children of God. This social philosophy creates an unfavorable environment for weakness to spawn and grow uncaught, thereby empowering the household, the community, and the nation. Yet still there will be those arguing whether the concept of God is real or illusory because of their misunderstanding of the above principles of infinity, neglecting all mentioned studies and doubting that God can be experienced or truly known, whether by study, meditation, or some metaphysical technique, asserting that it is merely faith only to be proven upon death. However, even without these practices or experience, with faith alone one's life is still enhanced simply by the logic of believing versus non-believing. First off, if one believes in an eternal spirit and then dies discovering verily that there is no eternal spirit, one would not know anyway. Yet if one lives life disbelieving and then dies, discovering in dismay that one's belief system was terribly wrong, there will most likely be great regret to deal with when one awakens instantly to spiritual awareness and recapitulates on how restricted a life one has led. Clearly then, the only logical choice is to believe. Thus, the individualist must add that the man who doubts God without employing techniques to experience it is like a man who denies mathematics without ever practicing it. Lastly, it is a fact that energy cannot be destroyed. And by reasonable hypothesis, it is reasoned that the smallest breakdown of energy is pure consciousness. Thus, whatever happens upon death, the individualist believes that the consciousness continues by the above principles. Armed with this entire unified concept of divinity, the individualist fills his soul completely, leaving no voids, freeing him from the lusts of the animal mind and all of the darkness and pitfalls which accompany it. It is not enough to be a believer in this logic, but a practitioner, for one could believe and yet commit terrible acts of injustice to one's fellow men. One could also not believe and be a very noble citizen. It is here shown that virtue holds precedence to the individualist, but it is stressed that the belief of unity will only enhance virtue's integrity. Quote, "Thou believest that there is one God. Thou dost well. The devils also believe, and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead." End quote. James 2:19-20, King James Bible.